Hello and welcome to Bottom Line. I'm Cindy Keynes. We have a very great show for you today, very informative, but we want to talk about some serious subjects that deals with PTSD and performance anxiety. I'd like to introduce my guest for today's show. She's with the Birmingham Maple Clinic. She's the therapist, Monica Galinsky. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, Monica, let's talk something very serious, PTSD, that can be something that people deal with. They might interact with someone who has that, but maybe for someone who's watching, what might be considered PTSD?
So PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's developed when an individual has been through a horrific ordeal where physical harm or the threat of physical harm occurred. Okay. Oftentimes it's associated with returning war veterans.
Right.
However, individuals can experience this after a sexual assault, after mugging, even surviving a natural disaster or a car accident. A lot of times what I tell my clients is that there's small T's and large T's, big traumas and small traumas, and that it's very subjective based on how someone can interpret and handle their stress. So you and I could both be in the same car accident and you walk away without suffering any symptoms of trauma, whereas I may have experienced intense trauma during the accident.
And maybe someone also, maybe a lot of small T's then become a bigger T, or just it becomes too much.
Right.
Kind of puts somebody over the edge, as they say. What
or love to do, seek help. Why wait or live another day with that type of pain?
Which is wonderful, because maybe they could work it out, talk through something, like, again, that's your area of expertise. Your therapist, you can help them, with that. What if they say, I'm sorry, Monica, but you're probably not going to understand because you never lived through it, or maybe you didn't have this, or you didn't have this experience. How do you deal with sometimes when you have somebody who might just say, you know what, I don't think this talking through is going to be for me.
Right. Resistance in therapy is normal. It's not normal. Some people experience it, others don't. But I think, you're right. I don't know the trauma that you experienced, but that doesn't mean that also my life experience doesn't lend me to have similar feelings or emotions. So I can relate that way. But also in the training that your therapist has gone through, they've spent many years being educated on this topic and learning the different modalities of therapy that are effective.
And how would you also, if anybody's watching, and they're going to pick a therapist, and this might be whether it's PTSD, performance, or any reason, what might they want to ask? What do you want to feel when you sit down with that therapist and you have a consultation? Because that's, as you said, that's very important no matter what you're going to see the therapist for, that you have this rapport. And how do you know that maybe? Do you just feel it as a kind of a gut feeling, or is there some questions you want to ask that other person or the potential therapist?
I think you can ask as many questions as you want, but I think you won't know until you go in for your first appointment. And it's at that time where I think it is a gut feeling that an individual has with, this is a good fit, or I could open up, I could trust this person, I feel safe. You won't know that till you go in. And I would say if you don't initially feel that, don't stop. Find another therapist, keep looking. Research tells us that the best indicator for change is your fit with the therapist. So if it doesn't work out, you wouldn't stop
it's
seeking.
It's not going to hurt your feelings if they don't feel comfortable with you, right?
Right. And even going to a doctor, I tell this to my clients all the time. If you don't like what the doctor's advice was or the medication, well, you seek out another doctor. You don't just let that illness, or for whatever reason you were going to the doctor,
stop you from
from getting the treatment you want. So I think it's the same with therapy.
Right. That's true. You have a general practitioner that you go back to because you care like the person, you feel confident in them. Are there any myths about PTSD that people might have that might be not true, that they think about that disorder?
I think some
continue to meet them in person?
I think, what is your type of therapy, or how would you describe yourself as a therapist? I think when I get that question, I'm always somewhat taken aback, like, here, let me sell myself to you. But I think it's important because you need to know if they're collaborative or not, if it's just going to be you talking throughout the whole session because that's their method of practice. Yeah, their approach. I think another important question to ask is their hours, their availability. Are they flexible to work with you, or are they more rigid where they need to see you this time every week? And I think another really great question is, I got this the other day on the phone, was, do you enjoy what you do? I do.
Yeah.
I do. And this is why I'm in it. And I think when you feel that connection, you will know.
Right. That's probably a very good question. For a lot of people, are you happy at what they're doing? Do you like what you're doing? Especially when it's, for therapy session, because you're not, are you just getting ready to retire? Or are you going to, no, it's probably a really valid question.
It's a thoughtful question. Yeah. I think more people, when they're seeking therapy, become a little bit more mindful. And it was one that took me aback on the phone.
But now you know that you do, right?
Yeah.
So if I was to come to your office and say, Monica, I'm having trouble performance anxiety, let's say work-related, whenever I have to stand up in front of people, or just even when I'm around my team and I have to talk about my project or something, are there some do's and don'ts and things, and maybe not do's and don'ts, but helpful tips and techniques that people can do when they're getting ready to do presentation at work or have to talk to new people in a group?
And so individuals who experience anxiety often overestimate the probabilities. The probability or the likelihood that I'm going to mess up, I'm going to fail, I'm going to do poorly. And on the other end of that, it's overestimating consequences. If I mess up, I'm going to embarrass myself, I could be demoted, I could be kicked off the soccer team if I don't perform.
Yeah, exactly.
And so those are irrational beliefs. So it's really addressing that self-doubt and saying the likelihood that you're going to mess up is very slim, because we're going to take the necessary steps to plan ahead, to prepare. People underestimate that piece. Prepare. Take notes. Write down your thoughts or points that are very valid and important for you to reach. And I also tell my patients in a nice way, you're not that important. Yeah. Most likely, those individuals are coming to get the information that you're giving them, not to critique or judge you.
Right.
You're not the one that's in the spotlight. It really is, tell me what this next project is, I want all the details.
Right. And that's probably a good way to look at it, even though you don't feel that way. You think everybody's watching, what are you dressing, how you say things, and it's like, well, no, they might just want to know the project, what you've done, how'd you succeed,
And breathing. Yeah. Oftentimes when we're anxious, we have a tightness in our chest, shortness of breath. We forget we need to take a deep breath. And what that does too is it sends signals to our brain that we can relax. We're okay, we're safe.
And what if people are watching that, maybe their parents, or there might be teenagers or college students watching, and just when test time comes, they just get nervous. What might you coach them on some tips and techniques?
I think the most underrated, or people minimize it, is sleep. You need 7 to 9 hours. It is really important. Also food, what we fuel our body with. Sugary or high processed foods can add to our anxiety.
Some chips and pops, not the solution.
Right.
At midnight, yeah.
And so research tells us that food rich with vitamin B and omega-3s is really helpful at times for some individuals. But it's also important to